Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Michelle Graff, and I'm the editor-in-chief of National Jeweler. I'm pleased to welcome you to the latest episode of My Next Question, Jewelers of America and National Jeweler's newly co-branded webinar series. Today's session is hosted by Jewelers of America Chief Financial Officer Annie Doresca and myself, and our guests are jewelry designer Sheryl Jones and Reggie Johnson, SVP, North American Field Human Resources and Chief Diversity Officer at Signet Jewelers. Before I turn it over to our host to get the webinar started, I want to let our attendees know that if they have any questions, they can type it into the Zoom Q&A box at the bottom of their screens. I'll be back on at the end of the discussion to field any questions for the Q&A session. Also, today's session is being recorded and will be available on the National Jeweler website this coming Friday, March 31st. Thank you, and please enjoy our session. Hi, everyone. Hi, Reggie. Hi, Sheryl. Hi, Annie. Thanks for being with us today.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Hi, everyone. So I think we're going to start with just a very general question, and Annie and I are going to go back and forth and asking questions, but let's just start with, can you tell me a little bit about your background? What do you do in the jewelry industry? How did you get into the jewelry industry? And Sheryl, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, so I'm a fine diamond and gemstone jewelry designer, and I started in the business about 20 years ago. My previous career was at MTV Music Television. I was in corporate communications, so I made a big career change and started out on the diamond manufacturing side of the business, and then got into designing jewelry, where I design and have my space located right here in the heart of the Diamond District in New York.
I have a lot of questions about MTV, but that's for another discussion. Reggie, can you tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are at Signet Jewelers?
Yeah, I won't go all the way back to my undergraduate degree, which is in mechanical engineering, but I became an engineer turned lawyer. And I was, when I joined Signet Jewelers, I was a VP in the legal department, and most of my career I've spent as an employment lawyer, labor lawyer, litigator, and I wanted to transition to the HR side. So back in 2018, I transitioned into my current role as Chief Diversity Officer and Head of HR for our stores. There are a few other things that I do, HR compliance, as well as employee relations, but that's how I transitioned to this role, being first a counselor and supporter of our HR function, and then actually becoming one of those, a member of HR.
Great. Annie?
You want my background as well?
Oh, yeah, sure.
No. Go ahead, Michelle. I mean, I'm happy to have everyone here. As you all know, Michelle mentioned, I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Jewelers of America, as well as the board president of Black and Jewelry Coalition. Happy to have Reggie and Sheryl join us. Sheryl is a board of advisor, as is Michelle, for BIJC, and Reggie is one of our board members. So welcome, everyone. Looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you. And Annie, I think you have the next question.
Sure. So in terms of discussing diversity, we know it can have many layers. And so when thinking about the staffing and the demographics that occur in terms of hiring internal employees, do you feel that the industry has improved in terms of diversity internally, in terms of hiring? Either one of you, Sheryl, if you wanted to answer that first, that'd be great.
Okay, well, I guess when I first started in the business and kind of understanding the lay of the land, on my side of the business, it's primarily family-owned businesses, third and fourth generation. So in terms of diversity, there just wasn't a tremendous amount of diversity across the board, women in owning companies in different positions. So I think that as it stands now, I can see that there's been progress because it's even discussed and people are leaning in and actually curious about how to make the industry actually represent the natural makeup of this country. So I think that that's a step in the right direction. And I think it's changed a lot since I first started.
Great. Yeah, I agree. This discussion definitely shows that we're going in the right direction. How about you, Reggie?
Yeah, I joined the jewelry industry in 2017, and I'll shout out to BIJC as being a board member, having some access to the various trade organizations and some of the things that they're doing. And I think that the discussion has become more robust. I think because of that discussion, it has given more visibility to this industry to underrepresented groups, and therefore, in turn, there's been more efforts to hire diverse individuals or to bring diverse individuals into this business. I think from a corporate standpoint, Signet Jewelers, we have about 9% of the market share, and I know other companies as well in the jewelry business. They are focused on increasing the representation of people of color as well as women in this industry, so that you know that the industry can become more diverse, and ultimately I think it will bring more visibility, more customers into this industry, as well as more profitability into the industry.
I just want to comment on two things were said. Sheryl, I thought your point was really interesting about making the jewelry industry look more like the company, excuse me, the country. But I'd also add, like, one of the discussions we had for years, because I've been in the industry since 2007. That's when I joined National Jewelers. So I think I'm the longest tenured on here, if I'm not.
Well, I'm close to that. Yeah.
Close to that.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the discussions we also have was like not just making jewelry companies look more like the country, but also look like the people who are mostly buying jewelry, because women are mainly our consumers. And for so many years, there were so few women designers, women in positions of power at big jewelry companies, yet women make up the bulk of people who were either receiving or buying jewelry for themselves. And Reggie, I thought your visibility comment was interesting, because Annie talks about that all the time, how she didn't even know until she joined Jewelers America how many jobs there were in jewelry. And there's like all, you know, it's not just one thing. It's just not making jewelry. There's many different career paths available in the industry. I mean, look at me. I'm a journalist in the jewelry industry. You know, people, there's a lot of jobs in here people don't even know exist.
Right. Exactly.
The next question, what about externally? Do you think there's more representation of a diverse range of designers, executives, and other professionals based on ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, and other levels of inclusivity?
I think that sorry.
No, you go ahead, Sheryl.
I was just going to say quickly that I think that it's also getting better, but I definitely think that there are people are still very curious and hungry to learn about new designers and different people that are in the market or in the industry. And I think that the internet's helped a lot with that. Yeah. Because you no longer have these traditional ways of marketing yourself. You can market for free, so people can find you a lot faster. You have more accessibility to new clients. And so I think that that's also helped increase that. But I still think that, like with BIJC, that's the great, you know, one of the great things about that this organization is that it allows people to access, you know, minority designers, and for them to be able to have a little bit more visibility and have a tent so that they can be presented in a different way. And there've been different programs and initiatives of, you know, trying to showcase different designers. And I think that that's also helped too.
Yeah, I think the internet's been a huge piece of that, because not only is it giving, from your end, Sheryl, designers the chance to market themselves, it's giving consumers access to what they want to see, instead of just turning on the television and being like, well, here are the 3 jewelry commercials that run. People can almost curate their own experience of what they want to see on their Instagram feed, on TikTok. And then the more you get into looking for one type of service or one type of person, the more and more you get, the more you discover, and the more you get fed that. And it's just a totally different way of, you know, marketing and discovering really for the consumer. I'm sorry, Reggie, you wanted to add something?
No, I mean, I think those are all great points. And I think I come from a corporation that always it looks for diversity in their designers. And I think that we have made efforts to identify some people of color who are designers and give them access and information. I mean, I think when you do it when you do it under the umbrella of a corporation that can give you some support, that can reduce some of the expenses that are associated with you and your business, getting the materials and the stones and things of that nature, and to be able to mass produce your jewelry, I think that that is a benefit that will allow for others who may not have that access to grow their business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just want to also add too that I think that the fact that people are able to access new designers and to drive demand, right? And I think that that's key, because that's going to really be the catalyst for change in this industry, is people, you know, people who are saying, I want to buy from a person of color.
Right.
I want to buy, you know, jewelry that's, you know, sustainable. All of these things that I think are driving and pushing the industry into, you know, a new space, that's going to be, you know, fueled by demand. And that demand happens on that grassroots level as well.
I mean, your social media, sorry, Annie, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add that also in the fashion industry, we heard about the % Pledge initiative and program. It'd be great to see something like that expand into the jewelry industry, so that retailers are ensuring that there's a showcase for designers that have a different demographic, not only based on color, but based on sex or sexual orientation, that they're also enhanced when showcasing them in the stores. But yes, Michelle, you wanted to add?
Annie, sorry, can you tell listeners, just in case they don't know, what the % Pledge is?
So top level, it allows vendors or companies have a commitment where they utilize a certain percentage of their shelves to allow people of colors, where it really started from, to have a certain place on the shelves. So let's use Macy's, they'll use a certain percentage of their shelves for Black designers or different. So what I'm saying I'm saying when we're talking about diversity, we have to remember it's not only based on color, but all these different demographics as well. It would be great to see that in the jewelry industry as well.
Okay, interesting. I was going to say to Sheryl's comment about consumers driving the change, social media has been a huge catalyst for a lot of social change and particularly as we're looking at from the consumer's perspective. You're right, it's consumers that are now in the driver's seat with trends and telling the companies what they want, instead of telling the companies telling them what they want.
Right.
Now consumers are saying, no, we want this, we want more, I want to buy more jewelry from Black designers, I want to buy jewelry that's sustainably sourced, I want this, I want that, instead of the companies driving the trends and dictating what the trends are to them, which I think is really interesting. And that's not going to change. There's no going back on social media, that's for sure.
Right.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, along the lines, as we talk about the workplace, you know, you hear employers say, you know, I hire the best candidate based on just them being qualified. It's regardless of race or gender, or I don't get any diverse candidates. What are your thoughts to those type of comments when you hear them? Reggie, I'll start with you since you smiled.
You know, it's interesting. I would say if you're not getting diverse candidates, where you're going to source those candidates is probably not the right pool. Right. I think that there are a lot of opportunities to go beyond your normal resources to identify the candidates who will be great employees for you. And I try to avoid terms like this person is the most qualified or this person is the best fit. Sometimes you need to get someone who is not just a culture fit, but you need to get someone who's a culture add. Right. Someone who is going to bring a different perspective to your organization that will, it really creates an opportunity to get the creative juices flowing, to be less homogeneous in your thoughts and bring more diverse perspectives to any type of business, organization, project, whatever it may be. I think that you have to stretch yourself, and just because someone may not have the traditional background that you typically look for, this person can be a culture add or an add to your organization because of their diverse experiences.
think that's a great point. I had to write that down. Not a culture fit, but a culture add. I think that's definitely a gem right there. Thanks for sharing that. Cheryl, what are your thoughts?
I would agree with, what Reggie said. And I think that we're at a time now where people, including myself, we're having different experiences, different career experiences. We're changing careers. And so things are not so single note like they used to be. My parents were school teachers. That's what they did. They only had one career, one profession. And I think that now that we are all doing lots of different things and having these different experiences, it's a wonderful time to tap into people who you might not normally think would be able to add to your company, but actually bring a whole different knowledge and understanding. And I think in an industry that is very family based and very insular in a lot of ways, it's a wonderful opportunity to bring some fresh new perspective and insight and experience into your business.
Signet, how often the industry benefits when we hire someone from the outside that's had experience in another industry and the fresh perspective they bring. Because you're right, Cheryl, it does get very insular after a time.
Mm-hmm.
Cheryl and Reggie, I don't want to put you on the spot, but there are any resources you could recommend for somebody that says, well, I'm only going to this place to look for candidates? Like, are there some places they should go, websites or other resources that they can visit? Because I think some people genuinely would like to hire a more, or at least interview from a more diverse pool of candidates, but I just think some people just don't know where to go, particularly people that aren't in large urban centers like New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, where you have big pools of candidates.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think some of the design schools, are a really good idea in terms of like FIT and SCAD and, places like that on the design front.
RISD.
Yeah. So that would be my thought in terms of outside, like going to GIA, the GIA job board, which is how I got my first job. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I have much more to add other than, I would say BIJC is a great place to post some of your positions as well. I also think that it depends on the type of roles you're looking for. And there are some talented people at various institutions, whether it be at HBCU, whether it be an institution that has a high representation of Hispanic or Latinx team members or students. And then, I think that you just have to, again, expand where you are searching for your talent, and there will be opportunities out there. And then potentially, there may be some schools in your area, whether it be high schools, whether it be community colleges that you can get into and share information about this industry. And you may, through either some form of mentorship or just career information, you can attract more diverse talent. Yeah. Because there are a lot of people that don't fully understand all of the necessary careers that we have in the jewelry business. Or the jewelry.
I was going to say that's usually the challenge too, is not too many people know about our industry as much, but going out to the colleges and universities is always a great step for exposure and more inclusivity for different people to learn about the industry and to show off their background, their different careers, and bring it to our industry.
For sure. Cheryl and Reggie, do you think the industry sees the need to be more diverse?
I think the answer is yes. I mean, from the information that I've seen, some of the individuals that I've met in the industry, this is a focus. I think that it intensified following George Floyd, and most organizations, most companies have continued on that trajectory to improve their representation of some of the for underrepresented and individuals. But I do think that there are some that, that don't push it as hard, right? They, it's not publicly facing as much, and therefore the investment in those efforts may not be as robust as they once were. And I think that some people with the greatest intent have unfortunately did not see progress, right? They were expecting some immediate progress and may feel deflated or dejected in that they were unable to, and may feel defeated and have not continued to pursue those efforts. And for those in that or who feel that way, this is a marathon. It is not a sprint. It is a journey that you have to take, and it will take time. Some soon will achieve some of their goals sooner than others, but it's really about surrounding yourself or engaging the right resources to help you along with the journey. But to answer your question more specifically, I do believe that there's still a desire, there's still an intent, and I think that people really want to have diversity in this industry because it's not just the right thing to do, but it's the right business decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about from your perspective, Sheryl? Do you think the industry sees the need?
I definitely do. And I think that it is a long game. And I think that the investment of, bringing people along, letting them understand what's available in terms of jobs and careers and education and investing in those areas, I think would really help long-term, because I think that maybe not now, but at least 5-10 years down the road, you're going to see the fruits of that investment. Because I also think that it's necessary, and I think they understand that because of who is buying jewelry and the demand for who is making the jewelry and the needs that the consumer has, I think will continue to keep that pressure. So why not lean in now and figure out a way to make that a successful thing?
I mean, to add on to that too, like the United States of today is going to look a lot different in 50 years as well.
Exactly.
The demographics of the country are changing.
Exactly.
Right. And I think to kind of move into the next question, I know this keeps me up at night at times. We're in the jewelry industry. Trends are what we're accustomed to seeing. And I tend to see is their concern with people dismissing DEI and figuring in their mind that, oh, this is a trend and eventually we'll dismiss DEI. It's no longer an issue. I still, when I go to industry events, hear people say, oh, we're the most diverse industry. We're the most diverse industry ever. There are no issues. It's an industry that embraces all, but not realizing that there still is work to do, as you all both just mentioned about it being a journey and a marathon. I know I have that concern. Look, what do you all think? Do you still feel like you see it? Are you concerned with the fact that DEI would be dismissed in the coming years and then it's like on to something different?
I think it will evolve, right? Like all things. I think my mom, she worked for the post office, and back then it was called the personnel department, right? Mm-hmm. Now it's human resources, or we talk about human capital. I think things will continue to evolve, and it may not be called DE&I, but it will have those same core principles and concepts that are needed. Ultimately, people want to be in a place where they feel included, where they feel that they can be successful and they feel that they belong. And in order to do that, we need to evolve and adapt and make sure that we are creating an environment where people can thrive. And usually they're looking for an environment where they're not the only person that's like them, whether it's from a race perspective, whether it's from a gender perspective, whether it's from, a geographical perspective. There's so many things that you consider, maybe even from a sexual orientation perspective. They're looking for individuals that they can collaborate with outside of just the day-to-day. right? Individuals who
Right.
can be a mentor, individuals who can support them along their journey, because most people want to grow and develop and expand. So I think it will remain a priority of companies. It just may not be called the same thing.
Reggie, I want to jump in and ask a quick question, if I may. When you say that people want to be at a company where there are other people like them, do you think this trend is stronger among younger generations when you're interviewing millennials and Gen Z, or do you think it's true across all generations?
I think that's a great question, right? I think each generation is a little bit different. I think that when you're talking about the Gen Zs and their true focus on not just about this being a job, but what does the company believe in? What do they support? I think they embrace inclusivity a lot easier than maybe others. And so it becomes more second nature for them, as opposed to some others who have not been exposed as much. It has to be more intentional. Right. And so I think that, yes, to answer your question, there are differences in how people embrace this. But I think as we continue to evolve and go along this journey, it becomes, it may not necessarily be a chief diversity officer like my role right now, but more so something that's just embedded in the culture, and it may be chief culture officer. Who knows what it may be called? Next. But I think people are really focused on the culture and what the environment will be, and so with COVID and how you have people who work remote and then some people are in office, I think it just changes the whole work dynamic, and we have to evolve with it.
Yeah, very interesting.
What are your thoughts? No, that's okay.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I said, what are your thoughts around, Michelle and I are both talking at the same time.
Okay. So I think in terms of DEI, I think that it's about how success is measured and what the standards for that are in each company and corporation to decide whether or not that's going to go away in the way that, you know, you're sort of talking about. And I think that that's why it's clear to have an understanding or a really good foundation and way of measuring progress that is part of the long game. Because if you look at it and you say, you know what, we're just going to do this quick little thing right now. We're going to do one program. We're going to label it, you know, we're going to put it under the DEI umbrella, and we're going to put some money towards it. And we're going to only commit for one year. And then at the end of the year, if we haven't reached X amount of dollars or this, that, and the third, it wasn't successful. Well, maybe it's about really looking at what the objectives are for the long term. Is it really to have a culture and a business that is representative and very inclusive? Well, then that can't be done in 1 year. Mm-hmm. Is it about creating, you know, jewelry designers that have a platform to sell and to distribute and market their jewelry to, you know, retailers across the country? Well, that can't be done just in one, you know, sort of collection. That is a commitment beyond just that moment. And I think that that's where we have to lean in and really have a clear understanding. The participants of the people who are participating in these DEI programs and the people who are creating, and the business side of it that's looking at the bottom line of all of it. So it really needs to me to be more than just sort of like one-pronged approach to have an understanding of how successful it is and whether or not that's really going to be something that lasts and people measure as a successful thing.
Right, I think you hit it on the nose. The more we are focused on the goals and being committed, the more it will continue to evolve. Because if we're committed to what DEI truly means, it should continue to be around. Right. Thank you. Michelle, I'm sorry, you wanted to say something earlier.
Oh, no, I was just going to apologize for interrupting Cheryl's answer by asking Reggie a follow-up. And just as a side note, I don't know if we define this off the top, but if anybody keeps hearing us use the acronym DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, I think most people who would be on this know that by now, but just FYI, in case somebody was curious about that. I want to ask a question. Reggie, you started to talk about this a little bit, but where do you see DI from a social impact space in the next like 10 to 15 years?
Yeah, I think it will continue to evolve. One of the things that I alluded to earlier is that culture is critically important. And as we, as I'll say I'm 50, right? Hopefully in another 10 or 15 years, I'm retired and it's somebody else doing this work. But I think that it will continue to be about creating an environment where people can grow and thrive, regardless of your race, your gender, your orientation, your socioeconomic status. It's really about creating a workplace, creating an environment where individuals can be their best selves, right? And can get and be their most productive selves, because I think that's what people are looking for, and that they can build relationships and be surrounded by individuals who are interested in their growth and in their development. And that's what DE&I is about, right? Is about diversity, right? Bringing different people together, equity. There are people who come from different backgrounds. So how do we provide the resources necessary so that they can achieve the goals and targets that they have set, as well as the organization has set? Inclusivity, embracing individuals who may be a little bit different, or making sure that they feel like they're included, right? And then belonging. Simply, I belong in this environment and they want me here, and I will have the opportunity to grow, thrive, and ultimately succeed. And that, I think everyone can raise their hand and say, I want to be a part of something like that. And that's what I see my role is. And through that, there are a couple of things that we can look at. We can look at data. We can look at, I think we'll continue to do that, even though I think in some states, CSG, corporate sustainability is being challenged. But I think that for the most part, people want to see those things. They want to make sure that that our companies and that organizations are socially responsible, which includes your people, right? How are you taking care of your people?
Yeah. Sheryl, any thoughts on the landscape in 10 to 15 years?
I would agree with what Reggie has said, and that I think that it's going to continue to reflect, where we're going and the landscape of the country in terms of the diversity and the makeup. And I think that younger people, the millennials and Gen Xers, are going to continue to push that agenda, because I think that that's the world that they know, and that's how they view pretty much everything. It's not compartmentalized. I think that they view it in a very much kind of like everything is connected. So I think as long as that viewpoint's out there, it will continue to support this.
Yeah, I also think, it's the Gen Zers too, right? And it's not just how they view things, but it's also who they are. I think I read somewhere that Gen Z is the most diverse generation the United States has ever had. And Gen Z, I think they're probably in their early mid-20s now, is probably the older Gen Zers.
Right.
So that's Gen Z is the generation behind the millennials.
Right.
So, what do you think are some ways we can improve diversity in the industry? I know we talked a lot, like we think we're making progress and most companies are staying up on top of it, but there's obviously, and Anna, you alluded to this, there's still work to do. What do you think are some ways we can improve diversity? And Sheryl, I'll go back to you to start.
For me to go? I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. So, excuse me. I think by continuing to talk about the opportunities that are available in the industry and really showcase all of the ways that people can work in this industry, I think that that's key.
Yeah, I think continuing to have these discussions, right? Providing resources to, you know, independents as well as corporations to identify talent. I think additionally, it's about giving back to your communities, right? Wherever you are, getting involved in high schools, getting involved in the colleges, and sharing details about what the jewelry industry has to offer. That will garner interest in this industry and create, I think, a wealth of opportunities to identify more diverse talent and bring them into the business, which means that you have to mentor, you have to spend time, you have to engage with people, and it goes beyond just a single point of contact, right? It's repeated engagement with individuals to share details and information about this industry and how they can build a career, how you can be a bench jeweler, right? I think about some conversations that Annie and I had earlier this week, how you could be a lawyer for one of the companies, or be in HR, be in finance. And there's so many different opportunities besides necessarily being a designer, or you could be a buyer, you could be in marketing. There's so many different opportunities in this industry that we just need to expose people to, because until until I got into the 2017, I didn't really fully understand what was involved, right? Until I was hired by Signet, I didn't realize who Signet was. I knew who our brands were and our banners were, but it's just people don't fully understand and comprehend, and it's our job to educate and inform.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, like we've talked about before, there's so many steps along the jewelry supply chain and so many things that go into the finished product, and people just have no idea kind of the amount of experiences you could have in this industry.
And the international aspects to the business as well, right? And so I think it's a wonderful industry, and we get to be involved in creating product that's involved in some of the most intimate and most beautiful moments that people experience, whether it be a wedding, birth, anniversary, all of those types of things. And it's a great industry to be in.
Yeah. One thing I want to tap onto, saying that you kind of mentioned, is, I attended an event conference in Dubai, and how they define DEI or how they respond to it is very different. So it's interesting how, our perspective and how we respond to it, or it being an issue in our nation is one, and how they respond to it, there are different layers that they have as well. So it's interesting, wherever you are globally, DEI can have a different response to it as well. So just want us to be mindful of that too. So the next question, you both have like 2 scorecards in your hand. One is for you to score the industry in terms of how it embraces diversity today. The other is how you would score the industry 5 years ago in terms of how did they embrace diversity. So let's go 5 years ago. You each have to give it a score between 1 and 10. How do you feel the industry handled or embraced diversity then? Sheryl, I'm gonna go with you first.
Oh no. Okay. So
this is 2018, right, Annie?
Yes.
Pre-COVID.
Okay. I would say probably around a 4, before COVID.
Sure. I think that's generous.
Well, we always want to keep positive and keep it.
So that's a 4, 5 years ago.
And then I would say
don't do it when you would score it today yet. So 5 years ago you would have given it a 4, right?
Yes.
Okay. Reggie, what would you have scored the industry 5 years ago?
Wow, I think it's tough for me. So if you get this Yelp rating from me, don't take it. It may not, but I would say I would probably be a little more generous than Sheryl based upon the lens that I saw it through. Right, I probably would say it would be somewhere between a 5 and a 6. That's probably what I would give it. But
Okay.
again, you know, I was relatively new to the industry at that time, and so my benchmarking is probably not the best for 5 years ago.
Okay. Michelle, do you want to score it as well? Do you want us to score it, or no, you want us to stay out of it?
No, I'll give it a score. And I think, I think also, I mean, to Reggie's point where he's saying his benchmark is starts sooner and my benchmark starts earlier. So I think for me, there's some pre 5 years ago thoughts mixed in there. Like, it's hard for me to isolate to 2018 when I've had so many years, I had a decade before that almost.
Right.
Maybe I'd give it like a 2.5, but maybe that's being too harsh.
Yeah, I would say a 3 as well. And that definitely has to do with my experiences. So I think those are some interesting numbers. So Sheryl, how would you rate it today?
I'd say like probably a 7, 8.
Yeah. Okay. And Reggie?
Yeah, I would probably put it at an 8. I think that there's a lot of demonstration of effort. I think there's a lot of investment in dollars. So I think that there's been significant improvement.
Yep. Okay. And Michelle?
I was also going to say an 8. I think, from my perspective, I think the industry has done an 8's like a B+, right? I think the industry has done a pretty good job of acting on diversity. And one thing I'm really heartened to see is I think a lot of people are continuing with it. They didn't let it just be a hashtag, a one-time thing on Instagram, something we were just talking about for 6 months after George Floyd, just to, check that box and then move on. I think people have really woken up to the need for change on many levels. And I think a lot of people are committed to it. Not everybody, but you're never going to get everybody. But a lot of people and people who matter are very committed, and it's really refreshing to see. And in my perspective, it's made for a more interesting and a more fun and just a more enjoyable industry overall.
Yes, agreed. I would agree with Sheryl, 7 or 8. And I think, Michelle, you raised a good point. You can't change everyone. So that would make me lean towards the 8, because the fact is the majority of people have worked towards making a change and invested in that change as well. So good. That was good. Michelle, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, I wonder if either of you, and maybe you don't, but do either of you have any perspective on how we're doing in keeping this commitment to DEI compared with other industries? Like when you look at other industries, whether it be fashion or auto or anything, do you look and say, it seems like they kind of gave lip service to DEI and have kind of abandoned it and we're doing better or worse? I don't know if either of you would have any perspective on that.
I really don't. Oh, go ahead.
No, you ladies first.
So I have several friends that work as consultants in corporate America, and they talk to me quite often about initiatives. And it seems like, from a very, very, very small, viewpoint, because I'm only talking about perhaps 3 or 4 companies that I've heard of, I think that we're probably on par. And I think that it feels like the commitment and what's happening across the board is pretty comparable. But I don't really know, because I'm not on the corporate side. So I can't really say, what it is, long-term that they've committed to versus what's happening in our space.
Yeah, look, mine will be very anecdotal. It's not, I haven't, I don't have a lot of companies dozens of companies to benchmark it against, but I would say very similar. But I think in some industries, they've been on this journey a little bit longer. Right. And so they have achieved a little more success than we have in the jewelry industry. And these things take time, and you must be in it for the long game, right? And you have to continue to make investments, because the return on that investment may not happen in year 1, it may not happen in year 3, but you will see a return on that investment that will be probably 10, 20-fold of what you actually put into it, because again, I think that as the demographics of this country continues to change, those individuals are your future consumers. And if there isn't representation in the industry, then those demographics may lose interest in that particular industry.
Right.
Agreed.
Yep. I know we have one question that came in earlier and two questions from our participants now. So did you want me to read the one from before and you handle the ones that we start with the earlier question?
Yeah. We actually asked, well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much. That was a great discussion. Cheryl, Reggie, thanks again for joining us today. The question we had come in before, I think we actually addressed, somebody had asked, let me find here, what are some alternative ways to promote racial inclusion when your town is not diverse? And I think we kind of discussed that already when we were discussing the employers who say, you know, I'm not getting any diverse candidates unless there's anything else we want to add.
That's true.
I think that one kind of got answered. Annie, do you want to go with the questions that came in during the course of the discussion?
Sure. What steps are being taken to shine light on minority jewelers?
I think, Andy, you're a good person to answer this question, talk about the things that we're doing at BIJC and some of the collaborations and partnerships we have there.
I'm just curious, sorry, before we move on with this, when people say jewelers, I'm curious if the questioner means jewelers as in retail, like store owners, jewelers, because that's what I think of when I think of jewelers. But then when some people say jeweler, they mean a bench jeweler, like a designer, somebody who's sitting in a bench making jewelry. So I don't know if the person, we could probably talk about both, I guess, because I'm not sure.
Right, and I'll respond to both. Just to give an example, I think, so one is there is a competition that allows designers to expose their talent. It's called Together by Design. Michelle and Cheryl, you both have been involved with that. Together by Design allows consumers to tell their love story and then allows designers to come into play and allow them to design the engagement ring, and the winning engagement ring would be a part of this Together by Design competition. That's one aspect. We also provide various scholarships around taking courses with GIA, attending industry events such as AJS Conclave, demonstrating their jewelry by showcasing it at JCK Vegas. That's another opportunity there. And another recent conversation that Reggie and I had is figuring out ways with different high schools to find ways to incorporate bench jewelry courses for high school students to actually get exposed to the industry as well. So top level, that's a lot of what we are doing, the scholarships for education, attending industry events, and these continuous discussions and mentorship as well. So our website, blackandjewelry.org, also has a lot of that information. So that's one thing. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything to that list that I gave. We have another question. Are there opportunities for mentorship for individuals that are out of school that are trying to break into the industry? I know Women's Jewelry Association has a great mentorship program called Loop, right? And so that is one.
I'm actually on the mentorship committee of the Women's Jewelry Association. So I think it's a great resource as far as mentorship in the industry goes. And it was kind of like, honestly, the basis of founding for that whole organization was there were so few women in the industry at that time that it was kind of founded as a mentorship organization. Just a little background on WJA.
Yep. And I would also suggest, sometimes people look for a structured way to look for a mentor. I have gone out the box and just reached out to someone that captured me for something that I feel that I may be lacking and I want to learn from them. Feel open to reach out to someone that you think will help you through whatever your career path is, or that you may want to just chat and have a conversation with. Don't always look for that structured mentorship program. There's so many opportunities that I know I didn't have when I was younger. LinkedIn is a great resource. The different opportunities that Jewelers of America, National Jeweler, Women's Jewelry Association, BIJC, we just talked about. There's so many different places that you can meet people, AGS Conclave, industry events, network, and put yourself in those places and just connect with someone and just ask them to continue those dialogue.
Very true.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have just reached out to me, you know, on Instagram. They see my jewelry and they want to know more about it. And, you know, I always am happy to meet for a coffee just to talk and give ideas. So I think that people are more accessible than you realize.
I mean, especially with social media.
Absolutely.
And Annie, I'm so glad you mentioned LinkedIn, because I wanted to bring that up earlier when we were talking about finding candidates. I think LinkedIn is wonderful. And I think LinkedIn, for me anyway, has replaced Facebook as the place to have like intelligent industry conversations and like back and forth with people in the industry and find people who are engaging and engaged and talk about subjects that are relevant. I think LinkedIn has grown from so much what it was.
Yes, I'm addicted to LinkedIn too. And they have a lot of networking groups there too, so that you can.
That's true.
Go there. But ditto to what Michelle said, Sheryl and Reggie, thank you both. All of your insight and gems. I was taking a lot of notes for myself, so I know our participants are doing the same. This was very helpful. Is there anything else either of you want to share or that we may not have discussed?
I think that, you know, as we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, I think at the end of the day, it's really about embracing and understanding that difference can be positive, right? Regardless, you know, it's really inviting that difference, because even though on the exterior or based upon something you're seeing on the resume, they may seem to not necessarily be a fit, but potentially a culture add, you're going to find that there are more similarities and more things in common than you probably imagine. And always keep an open mind, and some of the things that may help you to get over some of the biases that you may have is if you have someone, you know, scratch out the name, right? That way you don't know potentially ethnicity, you don't know gender, and just look at their qualifications. That's the blind resume. Just try to do something different to eliminate the biases so you can see things through a different lens.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
If no one else has anything to add, I'm going to wrap up with a little plug for our next webinar. Again, Sheryl and Reggie, thank you so much. This was a great discussion. Thank you to everyone who attended today. Annie, thank you so much for your time as well. My next question is going to be back on April 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So Jewelers America's Susan Posnock and National Jewelers Lenore Fido will be hosting a session on attracting and retaining the best talent. And I know that's a topic that's really germane for jewelers right now. We know a lot of jewelers out there are struggling to find people to work in their stores. So there's a slide here, and Lenore and Susan will be joined by Zachary Jewelers Chief Operating Officer Constance Palomalu, Adrienne Sonogo, founding board member and education chair at the Black and Jewelry Coalition, and Peter Hartz, who is the Senior Manager of Career Services at the Gemological Institute of America. I just dropped the link to register in the chat. And for those listening to the recording, the link can be found at nationaljeweler.com/webinars. Thanks again for joining us, and please take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.